When Zahara saw her sister-in-law storm into her baby shower, smashing the cake and shouting that she'd never carry a child to term, her heart shattered in front of everyone. But 6 months later, as the same woman stood trembling at Zahara's door, begging for help, the whole town witnessed how karma moves in silence, and what Zahara did. It left even her enemies speechless. Zahara, a kind woman from Kasumba village, was finally smiling again. After 3 painful miscarriages that almost broke her spirit, she was now 7 months pregnant, and everyone said this time her baby would come safely. Her husband, Kwame, planned a beautiful baby shower for her. Friends and family gathered, about 50 people, and the whole house was filled with laughter, music, and the sweet smell of food. Zahara wore a lovely blue dress, her hands resting on her baby bump, feeling proud and hopeful. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but suddenly the joy turned into shame. Out of nowhere, Amara, her sister-in-law, stormed into the party. Her face was full of anger and jealousy. Without caring about the guests watching, Amara pointed at Zahara and shouted, "You are cursed! You will never carry a child to term!" The room went silent. Every guest froze in shock. Then, before anyone could stop her, Amara walked straight to the big, beautiful cake in the center and smashed it with her bare hands. The cream and pieces of cake flew everywhere. Zahara stood there, her eyes wide, her heart breaking into pieces. Tears filled her eyes as whispers started to spread among the guests. Some people looked away in embarrassment. Others shook their heads in disbelief. No one dared to defend Zahara. In a few seconds, her dream day turned into a nightmare. Her hands, which were once proudly holding her belly, now shook with fear and sadness. Zahara felt like the ground should just open and swallow her. The joy, the laughter, the celebration, all gone, replaced by shame and humiliation, right in front of everyone she knew. Behind Amara's cruel attack at the baby shower was something much deeper, a burning jealousy that had been growing for years. You see, Amara was never happy about Zahara marrying her brother Kwame. From the very beginning, she felt that Zahara didn't deserve him. Kwame was wealthy, respected, and kind. And in Amara's eyes, Zahara was just an ordinary village girl who got lucky. That thought ate her up inside every single day. Every time she saw her brother showing love and care to Zahara, Amara's heart grew colder. She wanted Zahara out of the family, by any means. When Zahara had her 3 miscarriages, instead of feeling sorry for her, Amara felt secretly pleased. In her mind, it was proof that Zahara didn't belong, that she wasn't good enough to be the mother of Kwame's children. And when Zahara finally got pregnant again and started celebrating, that was the last straw for Amara. The thought of everyone gathering to honor Zahara after everything made her blood boil. She couldn't stand the idea of people praising Zahara and calling her blessed, so she made up her mind to destroy that happiness, no matter what. Before the baby shower, Amara had already started her wicked plan. She went around the village, whispering lies into people's ears. She told them that Zahara was barren, cursed, and that this new pregnancy would end in tears, just like the others. She said Zahara used charms and tricks to trap Kwame, and that the baby shower was just a show. Some people believed her. Others started to doubt Zahara quietly. Amara's words spread like wildfire through Kasumba village, poisoning hearts against Zahara. In her heart, Amara thought she was winning. She thought if she could shame Zahara enough, her brother would finally leave her. That's why she stormed into the baby shower with so much anger. It wasn't just a sudden rage, it was years of hidden jealousy exploding in one terrible moment. And after smashing the cake and calling Zahara cursed, Amara felt powerful, thinking she had finally broken her. But little did she know, karma was already on its way, silently watching and waiting for the perfect time to strike back. After that terrible day, Zahara's world became dark and lonely. She locked herself inside her house and refused to come out. The pain in her heart was too heavy. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amara's angry face and heard her cruel words. The image of the smashed cake, the silent guests, and the whispers haunted her day and night. Zahara didn't want to see anyone. She didn't want to face the eyes that had watched her humiliation. She stayed in her room, holding her baby bump, praying that her unborn child would survive this storm. Tears became her only companion, and the once joyful home turned cold and quiet. But outside, things were even worse. The whole village of Kasumba was buzzing with gossip. At every corner, people whispered about Zahara's disgrace. Some said she really was cursed, just like Amara shouted at the baby shower. Others said this was a sign that her pregnancy would end badly again. The women at the market laughed behind her back, saying, "How can someone with such bad luck throw a celebration?" Even men shook their heads, claiming that Kwame's wealth was being wasted on a woman who brought shame. The worst part was that even Zahara's close friends began to distance themselves. Friends who used to visit her and laugh with her now avoided her home. They didn't want to be connected to Zahara's so-called bad luck. Some even changed the road they used, just to avoid walking past her house. It was as if she had suddenly become a stranger to everyone. No one wanted to call her friend anymore. Her phone stopped ringing, and the people who once praised her disappeared like smoke. Zahara felt abandoned, not just by her friends, but by the whole community. She could hear their whispers through her window. They said she was a bad sign, that anyone close to her would face misfortune. Her heart broke even more each time those cruel words reached her ears. Even when she needed support the most, she stood alone, drowning in pain and shame. The loneliness wrapped around her like a heavy blanket, making it hard to breathe. As days turned into weeks, Zahara wondered if she would ever be free from this torment. She was afraid to step outside, afraid that the world would point and laugh again. Her only comfort was the little kicks from her baby, reminding her that she still had one reason to keep fighting. But deep inside, the wound was deep, and the scars of that public humiliation stayed fresh, as the town's mockery continued to echo around her like a cruel song. At 7 months pregnant, just when Zahara thought things couldn't get worse, her world shook again. One night, she woke up with a sharp pain in her stomach. She tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the baby moving, but the pain got stronger, and soon she was struggling to even breathe. Kwame, her husband, rushed her to the hospital in the middle of the night. The doctors checked her quickly, and their faces turned serious. They told Kwame that both Zahara and the baby were in danger. Her blood pressure was too high, and there were signs that the baby wasn't getting enough oxygen. If they didn't act fast, they could lose them both. Zahara lay there on the hospital bed, weak and scared. She held her belly, whispering to her baby to stay strong. She had already lost 3 pregnancies before, and the fear of losing this child was breaking her heart. Kwame stayed by her side, holding her hand tightly, trying to be strong for both of them. He promised her that they would fight this together, that he wasn't going to let anything happen to her or their baby. His love and support gave Zahara a little hope, even in that dark moment. But while Zahara and Kwame were fighting for their baby's life, the family back home was saying something different. Amara, the same sister-in-law who ruined her baby shower, was spreading more cruel words. She told anyone who would listen that this was karma punishing Zahara. She said Zahara had stolen her brother, Kwame, from another woman, and that now God was showing his anger. Some family members believed Amara's story and refused to visit Zahara at the hospital. They said it was not their place to help someone cursed. Even neighbors and people from the village joined in the gossip. They said Zahara's complications were a sign that she wasn't meant to be a mother. The same people who once celebrated her pregnancy now turned their backs, watching from a distance as she struggled. Their words reached Zahara, adding more pain to her already fragile heart. But through it all, Kwame stayed firm. He ignored his sister's cruel remarks and focused only on saving his wife and child. He spent every hour at the hospital, praying and hoping. Zahara, though weak and tired, kept fighting because she knew Kwame believed in her, and she wanted to prove everyone wrong. She wanted to show them that she was not cursed, that her baby would survive. Every day was a battle, but Zahara held on, with her husband's love, giving her the strength to face the danger. It was a night that Zahara would never forget. The pain came so suddenly, and this time, it was unlike anything she had felt before. She could barely breathe as the contractions hit harder and faster. The doctors rushed around, trying to keep things under control, but it felt like time was slipping away. Zahara, too weak to hold on, gripped Kwame's hand, who was standing by her side, not leaving her for a second. His face was filled with worry, but his voice was steady, comforting her, telling her that they had come too far to give up now. They had fought so much already. This was their moment, and he refused to lose her or their baby. As the night wore on, it became a battle of life and death. The doctors kept trying to stabilize Zahara, but the situation was critical. They warned Kwame that they might have to perform an emergency C-section to save them both, but the risks were high. They didn't know if Zahara's body could handle it. The whole room was tense, filled with uncertainty and fear. But despite everything, Zahara's strength never wavered. She kept thinking of her baby boy, the tiny life growing inside of her, and that gave her the push she needed. And then, against all odds, something incredible happened. With one final push, Zahara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The moment he was born, the entire room let out a collective sigh of relief. The doctors and nurses were stunned. It was nothing short of a miracle. The baby let out a loud cry, strong and healthy, and Zahara felt a rush of emotions flood her heart. She looked at her baby, so tiny, so perfect, and knew that everything they had gone through had been worth it. News of Zahara's miracle spread like wildfire throughout Kasumba village. Everyone who had once doubted her, who had whispered about her bad luck and her so-called curse, couldn't believe their eyes. The woman they had ridiculed and shunned now had a beautiful, healthy baby boy. Her story became a local sensation. People were talking about her everywhere. From the village square to the markets, they were all saying the same thing. Zahara had performed a miracle. Her strength, her resilience, her ability to overcome everything had turned her tragedy into triumph. Even the ones who had once mocked her now saw her as a symbol of hope and courage. They couldn't understand how someone who had faced so much pain could come out on top. But for Zahara, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to herself that she could keep going, no matter what. Her miracle baby became a symbol of everything she had fought for: love, hope, and never giving up. The village had witnessed something extraordinary, and Zahara was no longer the woman they had once looked down on. She was now a hero, and her story would be remembered for years to come. 6 months after Zahara's miracle birth, the tables began to turn in a way no one saw coming. Amara, who had been so proud and confident in her cruelty towards Zahara, started facing a series of unfortunate events that seemed to be a cruel twist of fate. Amara, once the loudest in the family, had always been the one to mock and gossip about Zahara. She had made it clear to everyone that she wanted Zahara out of the family, and that she believed Zahara didn't deserve any happiness, let alone a baby. But now, it was Amara's turn to feel the weight of karma. Her husband, who had always stood by her side, suddenly walked out on her. No one knew exactly why, but rumors spread that it was because of her harshness and the way she treated others. He couldn't take it anymore, and just like that, Amara found herself alone. The once proud woman who used to look down on everyone was now abandoned and left to face the consequences of her actions. As if that wasn't enough, disaster struck in the form of a fire. One evening, while Amara was at home, her shop, the one she had worked so hard to build, went up in flames. The fire destroyed everything in an instant, leaving her with nothing. People who had once feared her or admired her now whispered about her downfall. The shop, which had been a symbol of her success and pride, was gone, and Amara was left with nothing but ashes and regret. With her reputation shattered, her husband gone, and her business destroyed, Amara's life spiraled out of control. She had no place to go, no one to turn to. The same people she had once influenced to mock Zahara now ignored her. The neighbors, who had once been afraid to associate with Zahara, now turned their backs on Amara, refusing to help her. She had no choice but to wander, homeless and alone, with no one to support her. Amara's downfall was so dramatic that it shocked the entire village. People who had once admired her arrogance now saw her as nothing more than a cautionary tale. Her pride, her cruelty, and her jealousy had led to her ruin, and now the whole town was watching her fall from grace. The very people she had tried to hurt were now looking at her with pity, and Amara couldn't do anything but watch as her world crumbled around her. Her arrogance had brought her to the top, but it was her pride that had caused her to fall. The people who had once feared her now whispered about her downfall, and Amara had become a lesson in humility. The woman who had once tried to destroy Zahara's happiness was now the one whose life was falling apart. It was a rainy evening when the unexpected happened. Zahara was sitting at home, enjoying the warmth of her house with her baby boy, when there was a knock at the door. To her surprise, standing there was none other than Amara, her sister-in-law, holding her own baby in her arms. Amara, who had once humiliated Zahara at her baby shower, was now standing at her doorstep, drenched and desperate. Her eyes, usually filled with pride and arrogance, were now filled with fear and vulnerability. She wasn't the confident woman who had once tried to tear Zahara down. She was now a broken shell of herself, begging for help. Amara, who had once called Zahara cursed and mocked her for not being able to carry a child to term, was now in need of Zahara's mercy. Her voice trembled as she asked for shelter, explaining how she had lost everything: her husband, her home, and even her business. The weight of her past cruelty had come crashing down on her, and now she was left with no one but Zahara, the woman she had once tormented. As Amara stood there, the entire neighborhood gathered around, watching in disbelief. They had all witnessed the way Amara had once treated Zahara. They remembered how she had spread rumors, how she had humiliated Zahara at her baby shower, and how she had tried to destroy her happiness. Now, the tables had turned, and the once proud Amara was reduced to tears, standing at Zahara's door with nothing left. The crowd watched, waiting to see what Zahara would do. Would she turn Amara away like everyone expected, or would she show mercy, even after all the pain Amara had caused her? The entire village was holding its breath, knowing that this moment would change everything. Zahara, who had once been the victim, now had the power to decide Amara's fate. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the moment when karma finally caught up with Amara. Zahara stood at the door, her baby boy in her arms, staring at Amara, who was trembling in front of her. The rain poured down heavily, soaking Amara's clothes, but it wasn't just the rain that made her shiver. It was the weight of her past actions, all the cruelty she had inflicted on Zahara. She was broken, desperate, and seeking shelter. Zahara's husband, Kwame, stood behind her, his voice sharp. He told her to send Amara away, to not forget all the terrible things she had done. "She doesn't deserve your help," he said. "She brought this on herself." Zahara looked down at her son, feeling a deep sense of love and protectiveness. She thought about how much she had suffered, how many years she had prayed for a child, and how Amara had mocked her pain. Zahara could feel the old wounds opening up, the humiliation, the loneliness, the fear that she would never be able to hold her own child. But as she held her son close, she remembered how hard the journey had been to get here. She remembered the dark days when she thought she might never be a mother, the nights she cried alone, wondering if she'd ever be enough. It was in that moment that Zahara faced a choice: revenge or redemption. She had every right to turn Amara away, to make her feel the pain Zahara had felt for so long. She could tell her to leave, to watch her struggle, just as she had struggled. It would be sweet revenge, the kind that would satisfy her anger and hurt. But as she looked into Amara's eyes, Zahara realized something. She had already suffered enough. Her son was the miracle she had longed for, and she didn't need to hold on to bitterness anymore. Instead of giving in to anger, Zahara made a decision that would change everything. She chose mercy over vengeance. She stepped aside, opened the door wider, and said, "No child should suffer because of their mother's mistakes." It wasn't about forgetting what Amara had done, but about showing that there was more to life than hatred. Zahara's act of kindness stunned everyone who had gathered to watch. It wasn't revenge that would define her, it was redemption. And in that moment, Zahara became the bigger person, choosing compassion over everything else. As Zahara opened the door, the cold wind rushed in, but it was nothing compared to the storm of emotions inside her. Standing before her was Amara, soaked to the bone, holding her baby tightly in her arms. The entire village had gathered outside, their eyes glued to the scene. Everyone had been waiting to see if Zahara would turn Amara away, if she would finally get revenge for all the years of torment. But Zahara did something no one expected. With her baby in her arms, she looked at Amara, then at the crowd that had been watching, whispering, and waiting for the drama to unfold. Instead of anger, Zahara felt something stronger, a deep, quiet strength. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She had already won. She took a deep breath and, in front of everyone, said the words that would change everything. No child should suffer for their mother's sins. The words hung in the air like a powerful spell. The crowd fell silent. They had expected her to lash out, to turn Amara away, but instead, Zahara had shown mercy, a mercy that stunned everyone. In that moment, Zahara wasn't just a victim of cruelty anymore. She was a symbol of grace and strength, someone who rose above the bitterness and chose the path of compassion. The village that once looked down on her now looked at her with respect. She had transformed, not just in her own eyes, but in the eyes of everyone who had doubted her. Zahara's decision had silenced the critics, and it made her the true winner in this story, the woman who turned pain into power and hate into healing.